Hello everyone, my name's Graham Heinson, along with my co-authors Ben Kay, Kate Robinson and Stefan Thiel. We'd like to talk to you today a little bit about the Kernamona Cube project and about some of the new data we've been collecting and the fresh insights. Now, the Kernamona province is part of the South Australian Craton. It's an immensely prospective area and has many similar geological attributes as the Gawler Craton. And it is largely, though, underexplored, and that's primarily because of the thick sedimentary cover and the remoteness of the location. So there are some deposits and some mining activity, but certainly in the northern part of the Kernamona province, it's really a very unknown location. So as part of an AuScope funded program, we are planning to put out, and we are undertaking, to develop what's known as the Kernamona Cube project with 200 MT stations approximately and 200 passive seismic stations to characterize the crust and the mantle from the surface down to several hundred kilometers. And in such a way, what we're doing is defining essentially a cube, an area about perhaps 400 by 400 kilometers, and other properties, the physical properties, down to 400 kilometers depth. We're also planning to use this project to start up a telescope site, a super site, and at the moment we're looking at access to Broken Hill. Now the Kernamona Cube, a little bit more on this project. It's the Kernamona itself is Paleoproterozoic to Mesoproterozoic craton. Particularly in the central part between the Flinders Ranges and the Barrier Ranges, there's thick sedimentary cover which varies from a few tens of meters to thousands of meters. And so largely much of the craton is unknown. So what we're planning with the Kernamona Cube is to develop a physical model of the Kernamona province, and we're going to characterize this in terms of the electrical resistivity, seismic velocity, the magnetic susceptibility and density. And we're integrating any type of geophysical data we have in the area, including the airborne electromagnetics, which covers almost the entire province, a few deep seismic reflection lines, and whatever we can, we will introduce surface constraints from drilling or surface geochemistry. But at the end of the project, what we'll deliver though is a cube of data and a cube of models. So the data cover an area 400 by 400 kilometers roughly, and the models will extend down to 400 kilometers depth. Now, in terms of progress, this project piggybacks on existing gridding and array programs, and these include AuSLAMP, and essentially the grid of sites over the Kernamona has been now completed. Also includes the more regional grid as part of AusArray, and the Kernamona project was funded by AuScope in 2009. So at the moment what we're doing is collecting broadband MT. We're about 75% complete. Of that, 25% is in New South Wales, and we really have had no access in the last 6 months. We'll also then collect ambient noise tomography over the entire Kernamona province, and this is likely now to happen in the second quarter of next year. But our plan is to complete the entire project by June of 2022. So just to give you an idea of the sites, this you can see the sort of ridge of elevation. This is a topography map. The blues basically show low and relatively flat sedimentary regions, and the highs are the greens and the browns. So the spine of the Flinders Ranges you can see on the western side, and the Barrier Ranges go on the southern and the eastern side. The black outline is really the extent of the Kernamona province, and the finer lines are the smaller tectonic boundaries within that province. Now, the green dots are legacy and AusLAMP MT sites, so there's a grid essentially about 50 kilometers of AusLAMP MT, and additional long period MT sites which have been collected over the years, primarily by the University of Adelaide. The red dots are primarily just what we call geomagnetic depth sounding. That's just 3-component magnetometer records. And they were mostly collected by Flinders University by Dr. Francois Chamelon and his group. And the black dots represent a combination of new Kernamona Cube broadband MT sites and existing transects that either collected by Geoscience Australia or the University of Adelaide and the Geological Survey of South Australia. So what we're trying to achieve is essentially a regional grid with AuSLAMP and then an infill grid particularly concentrating on the Kernamona province with broadband sites. And you can see the easting of 500 kilometres is essentially the South Australian New South Wales border, and we are missing a very large component of sites in New South Wales, and we hope also that this grid to be extended by Geoscience Australia. So just to show some other images of geophysical data, this is upward continued TMI, and you can see how beautifully it defines the Kernamona province. So it's a very smooth version. And this is the gravity model. So you can see that there are very distinct tectonic regions within the Kernamona province. So what I'm just going to show for the next few slides is some new data, new models. So this is a new 3-dimensional inversion of all the MT sites. This is 100 meters below sea level, so this is chopping the Earth off at 100 meters below sea level. Reds are very conducting, so these are mostly sedimentary regions. Blues are very resistive, so you can see the barrier ranges and the tops of the Flinders Ranges. But the deep sedimentary basins surrounding the Kernamona province are obviously show up very well. And we see obviously the extent of the Lake Frome, which is the blue outline in the northern part of the Kernamona province. This is 1,000 meters below sea level, and again you can see the deep sediments still show up, but the resistive parts of the topography, and in particular the barrier ranges, and the strong concentration of green dots is around the southern part is the Broken Hill. So this part of the Kernamona is very electrically resistive. So this is 1,000 meters below sea level, and then we go to 10,000 meters or 10 kilometers, and we get this remarkable image. So this is a conducting region. It's about 200 kilometers long. It's about 100 kilometers wide. It's a resistivity of about 1 ohm meter or less. Now that's the same resistivity as seawater. So we've got this zone at 10 kilometers, which is an incredibly conducting region over hundreds of kilometers. And this is not a brand new result. Kate Robertson demonstrated this from the initial inversion of the MT sites from the long period AuSLAMP program, but we certainly increased the density of information. And just to show you that from the AusREM model, which we hope to improve on and we get more data and higher concentrations, we see a similar variation in seismic velocity going from low in the west to higher in the east, but particularly in that zone which was electrically conducting is also very fast velocities. This is 20 kilometers, and you can see that red conducting region now sits centrally underneath the Kernamona province. And at 30 kilometers we have this very remarkable kind of following the topography. You can see the southern part of the Flinders Ranges and then the barrier ranges, and this is a result that Alison Kirby and her team found at Geoscience Australia as well. 60 kilometers, basically we're in the upper mantle, and we see basically the Earth as being resistive. Now, although there is some structure here, some of that is just the smoothing out beneath the conducting parts in the crust. So we don't really see very much structure at all. Just for fun, this is 160 kilometers, and what I've put on here are the diamond locations. So the deep blue parts are very resistive, and this is also where we see the diamonds. So this suggests the lithosphere is thick, and maybe that's where we get diamond-rich kimberlite pipes. So, in a nutshell, from the AuScope portal, what we hope to deliver next year is new data, MT, and some of the legacy MT, passive seismic we're collecting. We'll generate new models of the Earth and integrate those, and from these we'll get an insight into the Earth and this fabulous part of the world. Too many people to acknowledge. Many people contribute from many organizations, and of course we have access through the goodwill of traditional owners and landholders, and we thank everyone involved with the project. Okay. Thank you.